Well, we're nearly halfway through 2022. Where has the time gone? Well, as they say, time flies like an arrow, fruit flies like a banana. And if you have fruit flies around your banana, you might want to consider, well, throwing out your banana, or if it's your particular banana, if you happen to have that anatomy, probably consult your doctor. But nevertheless, 2022 has certainly been an interesting year, especially as far as movies go. In this case, I have reviewed 86 movies that were released this year. Yes, 86. And it's been a hard split. 32 F grades, 31 A grades. And well, it was certainly hard to, compile this list and come up with something to even give you just a taste of some of the worst stuff that I've seen this year so far. Obviously, when we get to the end of the year, I'll do an expanded list, likely a top 20. But for now, I'm John Retham with my top 10 least favorite movies of 2022 so far, with honorable mentions. Depending on how many movies you've seen, let me know some of the worst movies you've seen in theaters or on streaming services released this year in the comments, please. Full reviews of these are going to be on the Real Honest Movie Reviews playlist. So, nevertheless, let's jump right into the honorable mentions. Choose or Die, a Netflix original that had a good concept and failed to capitalize on it. And it wasted Robert Englund. And again, it wasted a pretty good idea, a choose your own adventure thing. But nope, we couldn't really make this any good. We had to make it as boring as possible. Cheaper by the dozen. Yes, Disney Plus released this remake, and I don't know why. I seriously do not understand why they decided to do this. It was unfunny, ridiculous, played out more like just a series of comedy ideas thrown in a blender, human centipede together with a bunch of bullshit and presented to you for about 100 minutes. Moonfall. Crime continues to rise as mounting moon terror grips the cities. Mounting moon terror. That right there puts this movie on the list. It may end up actually being on the full list, but I just couldn't put Moonfall on this top 10 because so much other bullshit has beaten it. Like, had this thing come out just recently and not back in February, I would have probably put it in the top 10. The Scary of 61st. Technically, this thing was released in December of 2021, but so close to the beginning of this year, I'm putting it on here because it was an unfunny mess of a goddamn movie that featured some pretty girls and an idea that could have worked, and apparently with a very small crew. I think there were like maybe 10 people working on the crew, and I think most of them were both on film and behind the scenes. So a small crew isn't the worst idea to, have for your movie, budgetary reasons or pandemic reasons or whatever. Maybe you can only get a few people to work on something like this schlock, but it was really bad. And then we get to Marry Me. Owen Wilson and Jennifer Lopez basically hacking out some really goddamn bad, terrible rom-com that rom-coms are never the goddamn best thing in the world. It's a genre with subgenres that Hallmark has certainly cornered the market on, the white market as it were. Seriously, I think you would have to sift through the goddamn cast like to find a needle in a haystack, like, to find anybody that isn't white or at least close to, but nevertheless, Marry Me was really goddamn bad. Now to the top 10. Interceptor, a Netflix original that featured somebody that really should have not been an action star. It's not that I'm certain that she wasn't really, really tough, but she was impossible to understand. The plot, it seemed like a movie where we missed the first movie. This was the second movie, and maybe we were going to get a sequel, and they just decided to take aspects of those and throw them into, just this movie that went on for about 95 minutes and took place entirely in a missile defense area in the middle of the ocean. We couldn't even eat cake by the ocean, which is a really gross song if you actually listen to the lyrics, but this was really, really bad. Really, really fucking bad. One of the worst action movies I've seen in quite a while. Then we get to Uncharted. Speaking of one of the worst action movies I've seen, this beats it because this took a somewhat beloved video game IP. I think we could all agree that maybe doing 4 games of this and a couple spin-offs was probably trying to milk this goddamn thing a little bit too dry. We've gone to the well so many times, we poisoned the well. All those cliches. Mark Wahlberg and the guy from Spider-Man. Tom Holland, I think that's his name. I don't really fucking care because I haven't really kept up with the MCU. But there was a good cast here. There was a good potential to do something that was kind of Indiana Jones-like, and they made it more like Indiana Jones 4, where everybody got on the floor and laughed at Harrison Ford acting like a dinosaur. So, Uncharted was not very good at all. In fact, not very good is putting it mildly. This was really goddamn shit and boring. Aggressively fucking boring. So, let's go number 8, The 355. Okay, we have taken Jessica Chastain, Lupita Nyong'o from 12 Years a Slave and Us and so many other movies, as well as Penelope Cruz, and we've taken so many other people in this. We've taken the idea of a female-led spy grand epic action movie and basically made it goddamn bullshit. Also, oh geez, Diane Kruger, by the way, was fucking lovely and deserves better than this. All these women deserve better than this. Even Penelope Cruz, who I've never been the biggest fan of. This was an incomprehensible mess that just somehow managed to take every spy cliche, do it in the worst way possible, and stretch this motherfucker out to 2 goddamn hours. To give you an idea of just how bad this movie was, and again, full reviews, I'm not going to get into too many details, full reviews on the playlist. This was out in theaters, I believe January 1st. It was on Amazon by, late January, and it was on The Cock by early February. And that's where I decided to watch it. Had I paid any amount of money for this movie, I would have been really, really frustrated. Fortunately, the monthly subscription of The Cock, if you pay for The Cock and stimulate The Cock a little bit, don't do it like this, kids. Don't do that at all if you're a kid. Wait till you're an adult. What the fuck is wrong with you? This was just so goddamn cliche and boring. Had I paid for this, had I actually paid to watch this in theaters, I probably would have been pissed. Though at the time when this was out in theaters, we were still in the midst of getting out of a bad snow and ice storm. So good, I was able to save, some time and just watch this bullshit, this goddamn atrocity. Moving on. Deep Water is in at number 7. They made me not want to see Ana de Armas in a movie again. Do you know how hard you have to try to make me not want to see the absolute goddess that is Ana de Armas in a movie? I'm not saying she's the best actress in the world. I think she gets a bit of a bad rap, but she was great in Knives Out. Been great in other stuff. And she's also hot. Very hot. Also, Ben Affleck was in this. I'm not the biggest fan of Ben Affleck. This movie actually featured one of the most unintentionally yet intentionally hilarious 20 minutes or last 20 minutes of a movie that I've seen in quite a while. Incomprehensible and ridiculous, defying the laws of physics and time and just being so fucking ridiculous. The worst chase scene I've seen in quite a while. I mean, maybe not the worst. That comes up a little bit later. But it was just so fucking goddamn stupid. Deep Water. And it was on Hulu. They released it on Hulu, and there's another Hulu original that's going to be coming out here in a little bit, starring Joey King. Yes, this is being filmed just before the end of June. So, sorry, I couldn't, excuse me for not having the clairvoyance to see how that went, so that doesn't look all that good. But this was just bad. This was really, really bad. And again, maybe I want to see Ana de Armas in a movie when I will watch about anything she's in. Now we go to number 6, The Bubble. They took some really, really funny people, some pretty good actors. They made David fucking Duchovny, who actually has very good dry humor. They made him an unfunny mess. They took Karen Gillan, I forget how you actually say her name, and they took various other people that have been funny in other movies, and this was about being filmed during the pandemic, trying to do a blockbuster, do all this, and it wasn't fun. Judd Apatow, who has made hit and miss movies, somehow made this one of the worst, if not the worst fucking comedy that I've seen. And it had a lot of people in it. It was a Netflix original. Netflix pumped money into this, and they should have, pumped some goddamn cyanide into the walls and or some gas into the walls and just taken care of it. And it would have been a mercy ending. Because The Bubble was really shit. There is one that is not on my favorites list, but I will mention right here, called Bubble. There's an anime movie. It's like Bubble Parkour that you should absolutely check out. Don't check out The Bubble, check out Bubble. Number 5, Chippendale Rescue Rangers. Got a bit of pushback for saying this was really goddamn shit. Maybe other movies will end up pushing this further down the list, but if this isn't at least in my top 10 by the end of the year of worst movies, it will be a bit shocking. I hated this. Yes, there were a bunch of in-references and stuff and whatever, and yes, there were a few things. They had Ugly Sonic, they had some other stuff, but it just wasn't funny. It did not utilize the characters properly, in my opinion. It made the whole fanfic thing of like Gadget and the Fly character, which I totally forgot the name of because I was so fucking pissed at this goddamn thing. They made them an item. They did a whole bunch of other stuff. It wasn't funny at all. And I gave it a good 30 to 40 minutes before I really started to hate it. I was like, okay, you know what? I've been shocked by movies before. No, this just got worse and worse and worse. It's a good thing Disney did not put this out in theaters because it would have been absolute dog shit. Number 4, Ambulance. I got more pushback on this than I expected. Now, if you guys like this movie, great. Fucking great. Michael Bay did quite a bit with a budget of around $45 million, whatever the fuck it was, and he exploded a lot of things because he is Michael Bay, and goddammit, that is what he will do. But this had the guy from Candyman, whose name I cannot fucking pronounce. He's a great actor. He's a great fucking actor. Also had Jake Gyllenhaal, who is good at times and also can be really fucking annoying. A beautiful woman as the main paramedic, and a lot of shit that exploded in about 2-hour long chase scene. Which, look, you can, if they made this movie maybe 90 minutes at the most, maybe 100, they might have been able to get something out of this, and maybe I wouldn't have hated it as much, but this motherfucker was stretched like Taffy left on the sun, which I don't know how you would be able to stretch Taffy on the sun, how would you be able to get Taffy near the sun. Nevertheless, physics aside, this movie defied physics and defied a whole bunch of logic and everything. And yes, I know it's an action movie and it's supposed to be like that, but it could have been seen as entertaining, but to me, it was so frustrating because every character made every stupid decision. And how would you fucking think this whole thing was going to fucking go, you fucking idiots? Oh. And that's number 4. Number 3 was Firestarter, Twisted Firestarter. This movie made me rage. Boy, there's a little Prodigy reference. I retro-reviewed the first Firestarter. The day before this one was supposed to come out on the cock and also in theaters. The original Firestarter is by no means great, but it did launch Drew Barrymore's career, or at least help continue to launch her career. This was, one, Zac Efron's old enough to play somebody's dad, which means we are all old and in the dirt at this point, or at least the dirt is up to our goddamn knees, like a scary story, to tell in the dark story. Moving on from that, weird alliteration, let's talk about how, well, they did one thing with a cat that they really didn't need to do. This movie was more of an origin story than trying to tell this, and also it just completely butchered everything with the characters, and I hated this. And I wanted this entire movie to go up in smoke. You can check out my review that I went on a full-scale raging rant at times because this was really, really fucking bad. This might actually, when I adjust this list at the end of the year, this could end up actually moving up the more I think about it. But we go to number 2, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequel. This is the only sequel. We don't count the other ones. We're trying to retcon this thing like we're Halloween 2018. Look, the main actresses weren't that bad. One of the girls, I believe, was in Happy Death Day, or the sequel. I think it was Happy Death Day to You. Good thing they didn't do a third one of those. And this movie could have been decent. The problem is also it was really, really short. I think it was like 82 minutes, 84 minutes with credits. And you know how Netflix likes to do long credits. So this movie really didn't last all that long. And it was stupidity from the beginning. There was this point where they were doing this live stream thing. Oh, this guy's killing people. We should watch this and make fun of him and everything because it's a meta commentary and I hated it and I fucking hated it and I fucking hated it. And I didn't care what happened to anybody well before the end of the movie. And also the fact that they're trying to retcon this and say, oh, well, all the sequels and they're trying to make it like Leatherface is at least in his late 60s, possibly 70s. But he's just able to do this stuff. Because reminder, the first one came out in 1973, 74. They was around that. I didn't care for the original, so I tried not to commit that to memory. But this was dog shit. And the fact that the ending hinted that we might get another possible sequel. Why? Why? To what end? Why? Number 1, Morbius. I don't even need to say anything. Morbius was every bad superhero movie idea, cliche. It made Catwoman seem grand by comparison. I retro-reviewed Catwoman recently, and yes, it was shit, but my fucking goodness, it seemed like Citizen Kane compared to this. I don't know if it's worse than Green Lantern, because Green Lantern wasted $200 million for those special effects in 2011, but this was absolute shit. One of the worst movies that I've seen of the last 15 years. because it was in development hell. It was, it had Jared Leto, who, if you read up on Jared Leto even a bit, the guy should, quite frankly, be jailed for some of the shit that he's done. And then we're taking this obscure character. We try to human centipede a whole bunch of stuff from the MCU because he's a Spider-Man villain. We do this. We take Matt Smith, who was in Last Night in Soho, but also was Doctor Who, in Doctor Who for about 10 years. Be weird if he was Doctor Who and anything else, but a terrific actor. And other people that could have meant something. Nope, we just threw a whole bunch of stuff in there. We wasted a whole bunch of stuff from Michael Keaton, or a little bit of stuff from Michael Keaton, and the special effects didn't even look like it would pass for 2002. It was dog shit, complete dog shit, and my worst film of the year. If anything beats Morbius. And yes, there's Titanic 666, a whole bunch of other stuff. Unborn, a bunch of other movies that were really goddamn bad that could qualify for worst movie of the year. But here's the thing, those movies had budgets about like that. Morbius had a big budget. It was still about 80 million, which is low for a superhero movie, but nevertheless, if you can't make a superhero movie with that much money, look, anything better than that, you really should have your directorial license taken away, and the entire crew should have been fired from Hollywood. Nevertheless, my worst film of the year. Let me know your least favorite films. Yeah, least favorite. Still half a year left, folks. Still half a year left. I love movies. I did not love these. Let me know your least favorite films in the comments. Please like, share, subscribe. Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Reckland. I'll see you soon.